Hi, I'm McCauley, and this is my video Annotated Bibliography, and today I want to share with you 5 books by Christian author Stephen Cosgrove. Stephen Cosgrove has written over 300 books. He has his own publishing company for children's literature for all ages, and he's written a special series back in the late 80s, early 90s called the Land of Barely There series. The Land of Barely There series is a bunch of books that all have the same theme. The same theme is all about excitement and adventure, intertwined with Judeo-Christian values. The first book I want to share with you today in the Land of Barely There series is the story of Hannah and Hickory. As you see here, Hannah and Hickory has 2 cats. Hannah and Hickory go to school and lie to everyone that they're very rich, but instead the reality is that they're very poor. They live in this town called Humble Hollow, which is the poorest town in the Land of Barely There. And when they go to school, they lie and tell everybody that they're really rich. But what ends up happening is that the students don't believe them, especially the bully named Bubba. The school bully Bubba follows them home and finds out that they do live in Humble Hollow and not in the rich mansions that they were saying that they were in. And so when he goes there, he finds out that they live in the same neighborhood that he lives in. And so Bubba comes to the reality that he is not better than them and that he needs to have understanding towards them. So what ends up happening in this story is this theme is established not to lie like Hannah and Hickory and not to judge like Bubba did. Scripture tells us in Colossians 3:9, do not lie to one another. And in Matthew 7:1 it says, judge not that you not be judged. So we see here in this book that the theme of this book has to do with not lying and telling the truth, not being ashamed of where you come from, and also not judging others because of what they say, but have understanding towards them because maybe they are in a rough situation and you need to be there for them. The second book I want to share with you is called Ira Wordworthy. Ira Wordworthy is about an old badger who's a store manager, and he always sweeps the streets, and he sweeps out front of the store, and he sweeps the paths, and he yells at all the kids that are out there reading on his porch. And everyone always wondered, why are you always so old, man, that's just ain't cranky and doesn't like to get along with anyone and always yells at the kids that are reading? Well, one night this raccoon named Rita comes in and actually asks him, why are you so mean? And he asks him, why are you so mean to the kids that read specifically? Well, what ends up happening is that the reason why he's mean is because he can't read. So Rita actually teaches him how to read, and at the end of the story he's able to open up his shop and he allows many kids read, and it becomes like a reading center in a sense. So the moral of this story really resides in don't be jealous towards others. Jealousy leads to anger, as Ira had a lot of anger. Instead, ask and learn how things could be done through others. So it's really about reaching out to others instead of being jealous and being angry towards others. Proverbs 14:30 says, a healing heart gives life to the flesh, but jealousy makes the bones rot. Isn't that true? Book number 3, T.J. Flop. This is probably one of my favorites. T.J. Flop is this big hunter. You see him as a rabbit, hence the name T.J. Flop. He's kind of dressed like Davy Crockett, got the big gun, the boots. He even has his own little wood log cabin. And what he does, he goes around and he captures people in the Land of Barely There. He's kind of like the big hunter, the guy everyone runs away from. And in the Land of Barely There, he actually goes out there and captures people, puts them in his room and showcases them like a hunter showcase, and he puts all their heads all around, and it's actually kind of a scary image. But what it does, it shows that he has to defeat everybody. He has to be the best of the best. And what ends up happening in this book? Well, he ends up catching this lady named Miss Felicia Fuzzybottom. And Miss Felicia Fuzzybottom actually helps him acknowledge the tender emotions beneath his tough exterior, this facade that he kind of puts on, that he's a tough guy, but inside he's very emotional, he's very vulnerable, and his whole life he's gone through all these issues. And so he ends up seeing that she cares for him, and he ends up marrying Miss Fuzzybottom at the end as he humbles himself, and that he sets his pride aside and becomes a very servant-like person to her. The theme of this book is really easy to get to. It's don't be prideful. Pride is dangerous, so be humble and confess the truth always, and good things will happen. Proverbs 29:23 says, one's pride will bring him low, but he who is lowly in spirit will obtain honor. Ain't that the truth? I love that. Book 4, Shadow Chaser. Check this out. Shadow Chaser is about a groundhog, and this groundhog actually is afraid of a shadow. And that's what the groundhog's all about. He comes out of his burrow, and if the shadow is there, then that means that winter is still going to continue. If the shadow is not there, he doesn't see it, then that means that winter is over. And so what happens is he's afraid to go out of his burrow because he's afraid of the shadow. He's afraid of the dark, really. That's what the imagery is here for the young audience. And so what this book does is it shows this Gabriel figure, Gabriel the groundhog, quivering in fear of his shadows. His friends come to his rescue and encourage him and put lights around him, to get him to come out of the burrow, because they need to know if winter's going to continue to be for the next few months or not. And what ends up happening at the end of this book is cool, because friendship conquers his fears, and he has trust in his friends, he has help in his friends, and he becomes courageous by the support of his friends. And so the theme of this book is not to be fearful and be very courageous. Step out in faith. And if you need help, trust your friends. They're supposed to be there for you, and that's really important, especially in relationships like maybe family. Trust in your mom, trust in your dad. Very relevant to kids. 2 Timothy 1:7 actually tells Christians, God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. And so even in the daily life of someone reading this, it's supposed to say fear keeps you from doing your purpose in life, fulfilling life, and enjoying life. The fifth book is called Fiddler. Check this out. Fiddler is a cool book, and I like how the title is reminiscent of his musical talent. He plays the fiddle. And what ends up happening is that Fiddler ends up going to a town where there's 3 villages, or rather 3 neighbors living in one village, and they end up not talking to each other. They never talk to each other, they never share anything with each other. They're not really neighbors, they're just 3 individual houses, and no one ever talks to anyone. And it's very strange, because you would think that them living so close and in the forest, they would know each other really well. Well, when Fiddler comes over, he actually meets every one of them and ends up getting them to be all together on the same page, and they eat all together, and they share their special food they make together, and he plays a special song on his fiddle for them, and it brings them together and makes them a neighborhood. So the principle is very simple in this book. The theme is, do not hate your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Giving is better than receiving. And Jesus said it better than anyone else in Acts 20:35. It is more blessed to give than receive. He also said to love your neighbor as yourself. That's my annotated bibliography. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you get to check out a book of the Land That's Barely There series. And have a good weekend.